sun was setting over Enugu, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that seemed almost cruel in their beauty. The contrast was stark. God's masterpiece hung above a city where heaven and hell existed side by side, separated only by the thickness of hotel walls and the weight of bank accounts. Outside the Golden Meridian Hotel, the most exclusive establishment in eastern Nigeria, luxury cars lined the curved driveway like jewels on display. Men in agbada and women in expensive lace stepped out of Mercedes and Range Rovers, their laughter floating on the evening air like champagne bubbles. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with the aroma of jollof rice and grilled fish wafting from the hotel's restaurant. And there, at the edge of this world of plenty, stood Amina. She was 16 years old, and though the streets had aged her beyond her years, her body carried the paradox of poverty, simultaneously starving and swollen, the cruel trick malnutrition plays on the body. Her clothes were layers of donations and discards, none of which fit properly. Her hair was matted, her feet were bare, and her eyes held that particular emptiness that comes from being invisible for too long. In her hands, she clutched a battered acoustic guitar. Its body was scratched and dented, 2 strings were broken, and the wood was warped from too many nights in the rain. But it was hers, the only thing in the world that was truly hers. As the wealthy guests walked past her, some averted their eyes. Others looked through her as if she were glass. A few wrinkled their noses at her appearance, quickening their pace toward the air-conditioned sanctuary of the hotel lobby. Amina took a deep breath and stepped forward into the light pooling from the grand entrance. Her voice, when it came, was small and hesitant. "Please, sir, Ma, I can sing for you, just for some food. I haven't eaten in 2 days." A man in an expensive suit stopped, looked at her and laughed, not kindly. "You? Sing." He gestured to his companions. "Look at this one. She thinks she's a musician." Others joined in the laughter. It spread like a virus among the well-dressed crowd gathering at the entrance. Someone took out their phone, ready to record what they assumed would be an amusing spectacle. A fat, homeless girl with delusions of talent. But Amina didn't run. She didn't shrink back into the shadows where people like her were supposed to stay. Instead, as she positioned her fingers on the guitar strings, closed her eyes, and began to play. The first notes were tentative, struggling through the broken strings and warped wood. But then something happened. The music found its way through the imperfections, creating a melody that was haunting in its raw beauty. And then she opened her mouth and sang. The laughter died as if someone had cut its throat. They laughed when she asked to sing for food. They thought it was a joke, another beggar's desperate ploy. But as soon as she opened her mouth, everything changed. What happened next wasn't just about a homeless girl getting food. It exposed a secret that could bring an entire system down. It revealed the truth about who really holds power in this world. And it wasn't the people wearing expensive suits and driving luxury cars. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming stories. Because what you're about to witness will challenge everything you think you know about worth, value, and the voice of the voiceless. The crowd that had been laughing moments before now stood frozen, their champagne glasses suspended halfway to their lips, their conversations dying mid-sentence. Security guards who had been moving to escort Amina away from the entrance stopped in their tracks. Inside that voice, rough and untrained but carrying a power that no music academy could teach, was something that cut through the carefully constructed walls between the haves and the have-nots. But who was this girl? Why did she risk humiliation in front of strangers, in a world that had never given her a chance? What made her believe that this moment, this song, could change anything? The camera phones that had been raised to mock were now recording with different intent. The faces behind them showed confusion, wonder, and something that looked almost like shame. Among the crowd stood a man who would change everything. His name was Chief Obiora Nwosu, though most people simply called him the Chief. He was the owner of the Golden Meridian Hotel and half a dozen other properties across Nigeria. His net worth was measured in billions of naira. His influence extended into politics, business, and every corner of Enugu society. Chief Nwosu had been distracted, scrolling through his phone, barely aware of the commotion at his hotel's entrance. He had seen 1,000 beggars, heard 1,000 sob stories. He had built walls around his heart as thick as the ones around his compounds. But when Amina's voice reached his ears, something in him cracked. He looked up from his phone, his eyes finding the source of that impossible sound. And in that moment, questions began forming in his mind. Questions that would unravel everything he thought he knew about himself, his success, and the system that had made him rich. What if her voice was the key to everything? What if the poorest person at his hotel entrance held more truth than all the powerful people inside? What if he had been building an empire on a foundation that was about to crumble? These were the questions that would haunt Chief Nwosu in the days to come. But standing there in the fading light, on watching a homeless girl sing as if her life depended on it, which in a way it did, he couldn't yet see how deep this moment would take him. All he knew was that he couldn't look away. None of them could. Her name was Amina Okafor, and she had been invisible for 11 years. She could still remember the day she became an orphan, though she tried not to. She was 5 years old when the fever took her mother. Her father, a mechanic who barely made enough to feed them, lasted 3 more years before a car he was working under fell and crushed him. There were no relatives who came forward, no safety net to catch her fall. At 8 years old, Amina learned that the world had no room for children with no one to claim them. The orphanage in Enugu was overcrowded and underfunded. She stayed there for 2 years. And one face among dozens of forgotten children. But when she turned 10 and her body began to change, developing earlier than other girls, carrying weight in a way that made her a target for cruel comments, she ran away. The streets became her home. People assume homeless children are skinny, skeletal things with hollow eyes. Sometimes they are, but sometimes poverty manifests differently. Amina's body, starved of proper nutrition, held onto every calorie as if preparing for famine. The cheap carbohydrates she could beg or steal, gari, bread, leftover rice, added weight without adding health. She was simultaneously overweight and malnourished, her body a walking contradiction that made people dismiss her suffering. She's not really hungry, they would say. Please look at her. What they didn't see was the swelling in her feet from protein deficiency, the dullness in her hair from lack of vitamins, the way her body ached constantly from sleeping on concrete and cardboard. For 6 years, she survived. She learned where to find food, the back of restaurants that threw away perfectly good meals, churches on Sundays, the occasional kind stranger. She learned where to sleep, under bridges, in abandoned buildings, anywhere the police wouldn't chase her from. She learned to be invisible, to duck her head, to never make eye contact for too long. But she never learned to stop dreaming. She found the guitar in a dumpster behind a music store when she was 12. It had been thrown away, too damaged to sell, too worthless to repair. But to Amina, it was treasure. She had always loved music. And her mother used to sing old Igbo folk songs that told stories of warriors and wise women, of struggles and triumphs. Those songs were Amina's only inheritance, the only proof that she had ever belonged to anyone. The guitar became her companion, her therapist, her hope. She taught herself to play using songs she heard drifting from bars and churches. Her fingers bled at first, developing calluses that would never fully heal. But slowly, painfully, she learned. She would sit under the bridge near Ogbeit Market, playing for the commuters rushing past. Most ignored her, some threw coins. A few stopped to listen, their faces softening for just a moment before they remembered their own problems and moved on. Music became more than just a way to beg. It became her voice when words failed. It became proof that she existed, that she mattered, that she was more than just a body taking up space on the street. At night, when the city finally quieted and she found a safe corner to rest, Amina would allow herself to dream. She dreamed of a stage, not a street corner or a bridge, but a real stage with lights and a microphone. She dreamed of people listening, not out of pity, but out of genuine appreciation for her talent. She dreamed of a life where she didn't have to choose between eating and dignity. But dreams are dangerous for people like Amina. They require hope, and hope is a luxury the streets try to beat out of you. Every day was a lesson in lowering expectations, in accepting less, in being grateful just to survive. Still, she held on to her dreams the way she held on to her broken guitar. Fiercely, desperately, knowing it was probably foolish, but unable to let go. Chief Obiora Nwosu's journey to wealth was the stuff of legends in Enugu. He had started with nothing, a poor boy from a village who had come to the city with only his intelligence and ambition. Through hard work, strategic relationships, and ruthless business decisions, he had built an empire. The Golden Meridian Hotel was his crown jewel. 5 stars, 300 rooms, the venue of choice for politicians, businessmen, and anyone who wanted to be seen as successful. It hosted weddings that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Its restaurant served meals that could feed a family for a week. Chief Nwosu told himself he had earned it all. He had worked 80-hour weeks. He had taken risks. He had been smarter, faster, more determined than his competitors. His success was proof of his superiority, evidence that the system worked for those who worked hard enough. But lately, something had been nagging at him. A whisper in the back of his mind that grew louder in the quiet moments. His wife had died 3 years ago, cancer, sudden and merciless. His children, now adults, visited rarely, their conversations stilted and transactional. His mansion was enormous and empty. His bank account grew larger while his sense of purpose grew smaller. He threw himself into work, into expansion, into the next deal and the next acquisition. But the emptiness followed him like a shadow. He had started to notice things he used to ignore, the way his hotel security harassed street children, the exploitation built into his supply chains. Farmers paid pennies so his restaurant could charge premium prices. The corruption greasing every transaction, the poverty financing his luxury. He told himself this was just how the world worked. You couldn't save everyone. Business was business. Sentiment was for people who couldn't afford to be practical. But the whisper in his mind kept asking, at what cost? At what cost? He had no answer, not until the evening a homeless girl with a broken guitar stepped into the light outside his hotel and sang a song that would crack his carefully constructed worldview wide open. Amina's fingers found the familiar chords on her broken guitar. She had chosen this moment carefully, the evening rush when the hotel's restaurant filled with wealthy patrons, when the valet parking was busiest, when the most people would witness either her triumph or her humiliation. She had nothing left to lose. 2 days without food had left her weak and dizzy. The rainy season was coming, and she needed money for antibiotics. A chest infection was making it harder to breathe each day. This was her Hail Mary, her last desperate gamble. The song she chose was one her mother used to sing. She had adapted it, adding her own verses, transforming an old folk melody into something new. The lyrics spoke of struggle and hope, of being invisible and dreaming of being seen, of carrying weight that no one else understood. As she sang, the world around her seemed to fade. The mocking laughter became distant noise. The expensive cars and designer clothes lost their intimidation. There was only the music, flowing through her broken instrument and imperfect voice, carrying truth that needed no polish. Her voice was not technically perfect. She had never had a lesson, and never learned proper breathing techniques or pitch control. But what her voice lacked in training, it made up for in raw authenticity. Every note carried the weight of lived experience. Every phrase held pain and hope in equal measure. The lyrics, in Igbo mixed with English, told a story. Onye ka mbu. Who am I? A child the world forgot, heavy with the burden of being nothing, light with the dream of being something. They look at me and see my body. They don't see my heart. They don't hear my voice until I make them listen. Chief Nwosu's phone slipped from his hand. He didn't notice. His entire attention was focused on the girl singing at his hotel entrance. This impossible contradiction of a person who should not have this gift, this power, this ability to reach into his chest and squeeze his heart. Around him, the crowd had gone completely silent. The mocking laughter had transformed into something else. Recognition, perhaps, or shame. People who moments ago had been ready to dismiss Amina as a nuisance now stood transfixed. A woman in an expensive George wrapper had tears streaming down her face, her makeup running. A man who had been loudly discussing a business deal stood with his mouth slightly open, his conversation forgotten. Hotel staff who had been preparing to remove Amina now kept their distance, as if afraid to break the spell. The security guard, a young man named Chidi, felt his heart pounding. He had chased away dozens of street children from this entrance. It was his job. But standing here, listening to this girl sing, he suddenly saw himself in her place. He had been one bad break away from that life, saved only by an uncle who had vouched for him at this job. Amina's voice built to a crescendo, her fingers moving across the broken strings with increasing confidence. I am here, I am worthy. My voice breaks the silence. My song tears down your walls. You can ignore me, but you cannot unhear me. I am Amina, and I exist. As the final notes faded into the evening air, there was a moment of absolute silence. Time seemed suspended. No one moved, no one spoke. Then, slowly, someone began to clap. It was a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, tears on her face. Others joined in. The applause built like a wave, crashing over Amina with force she had never experienced. She opened her eyes, stunned. She had expected mockery or perhaps pity. She had not expected this, genuine appreciation, respect, recognition of her talent. But Chief Nwosu was not clapping. He stood apart from the crowd, his face a mask of complex emotions. As the applause faded, he stepped forward. You, he said, his voice carrying authority that made people instinctively move aside. What is your name? Amina's courage, which had carried her through the performance, suddenly faltered. This was Chief Nwosu. She knew who he was. Everyone in Enugu knew who he was. The owner of this hotel, one of the richest men in the city. Amina, sir, she whispered, Amina Okafor. Where did you learn to sing like that? I taught myself, sir. My mother used to sing. Before she died. Chief Nwosu's jaw tightened. Something in her words had struck a nerve. Come with me, he said abruptly. The crowd murmured. Amina's eyes widened with fear. Sir, I just wanted some food. I don't want any trouble. You're not in trouble, Chief Nwosu said, his voice softer now, but we need to talk. Inside. Amina followed Chief Nwosu into the hotel, painfully aware of the stairs following her. Her bare feet left dirty prints on the polished marble floor. The air conditioning raised goosebumps on her skin. The opulence around her was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers, leather furniture, artwork that probably cost more than she had ever seen in her entire life. Chief Nwosu led her past the main restaurant, past curious staff and shocked guests, to a private office on the second floor. He gestured for her to sit, then closed the door. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Amina squirmed under his gaze, her earlier bravery evaporating. Why my hotel? He finally asked. There are dozens of places you could have performed. Why here? Amina hesitated, then decided on honesty. What did she have to lose? Because this is where the truth needs to be heard most, sir. What truth? That people like me exist. That we're not just problems to be cleared away by your security guards. That we have talents, dreams, voices, but no platform to use them. Chief Nwosu leaned back in his chair. You think I'm responsible for your situation? I think, Amina chose her words carefully, I think the system that made you rich is the same system that made me invisible. And I think you know it, sir. I can see it in your face when you look at me. You're uncomfortable because I'm proof of something you don't want to admit. The words hung in the air between them. Chief Nwosu's expression hardened, but he didn't interrupt. I've been outside this hotel hundreds of times, Amina continued, her voice gaining strength. I've watched people throw away more food in one meal than I eat in a week. I've seen your security beat street children for the crime of being poor where rich people can see them. I've watched your valet park cars worth millions while I sleep on the street outside. And you think singing one song will change any of that? No, sir, Amina said quietly, but I had to try, because doing nothing means accepting that this is how things should be. And I don't accept that. I refuse to accept that my life has no value just because I have no money. Chief Nwosu stood abruptly, walking to the window. Outside, the city lights were beginning to sparkle. Somewhere out there, dozens of children like Amina were looking for places to sleep. For scraps to eat, for reasons to hope. What Amina revealed next would change his life, but not in the way she expected. "There's something else you should know, sir," Amina said, her voice trembling. "Something I overheard. About this hotel. About where the money really comes from." Chief Nwosu turned sharply. "What are you talking about?" And with those words, Amina stepped across a line she could never uncross. She was about to expose secrets that powerful people had killed to keep hidden. She was about to become more than just a voice. She was about to become a threat. Amina took a deep breath, her hands clasped together to stop them from shaking. This was it, the moment that would either save her or destroy her. "I sleep under the service bridge near the back of your hotel, sir," she began, her voice quiet but steady. 3 weeks ago, I was there late at night when 2 of your suppliers came to deliver. They didn't know I was there. Nobody ever knows street children are there. We're good at being invisible." Chief Nwosu's eyes narrowed. "Go on." "They were talking about the workers at the palm oil plantation, the one that supplies your hotel's kitchen." Amina swallowed hard. "They were laughing about how cheap the labor is, how they don't have to pay minimum wage because the workers are mostly children and desperate people who can't complain. They said even if someone tried to report it, your connections in government would make the problem disappear." The color drained from Chief Nwosu's face. "That's a serious accusation." "I know, sir. That's why I'm scared to tell you. But it's the truth. I heard them say your hotel saves millions every year because of those contracts. And it's not just the palm oil. The fish, the vegetables, the meat, all of it comes from suppliers who exploit their workers. Your luxury is built on other people's suffering. You expect me to believe that a homeless girl just happened to overhear a conversation that implicates my entire supply chain? I expect you to investigate it yourself, sir," Amina said, meeting his eyes. "Because deep down, I think you already know. I think that's why you brought me up here instead of just having security throw me out. Something in my song reached you. It reminded you of something you've been trying to forget." Chief Nwosu turned away from her, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. His mind was racing. Could this girl be telling the truth? He had suppliers he'd worked with for years, trusted relationships. But had he ever actually visited those plantations? Had he ever asked where his premium ingredients really came from? "Even if what you're saying is true, and I'm not admitting it is, what do you want from me? Money? A job? A place to stay?" His voice had gone cold, defensive. "Everyone wants something. What's your angle?" Amina shook her head. "I want you to fix it, sir. I want the workers who grow your food to be paid fairly. I want the children working those plantations to be in school instead. I want your hotel to make money without crushing people like me under its wheels." "You're naive," Chief Nwosu said harshly. "That's not how business works. If I change my suppliers, my competitors will just take the cheap ones. If I pay more for ingredients, I'll have to raise my prices and my customers will go elsewhere. The system is bigger than me. I can't change it." "Can't or won't?" Amina's voice was gentle but firm. "You're one of the richest men in Enugu, sir. If you can't change the system, who can?" Chief Nwosu wanted to dismiss her, to have security escort her out and forget this conversation ever happened. But something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory of his own poverty-stricken childhood. Maybe it was his late wife's voice in his head, reminding him of the man he used to be before wealth hardened him. Maybe it was simply exhaustion from years of ignoring his conscience. "I need proof," he said finally. "If I'm going to upend my entire supply chain based on the word of a street child, I need concrete evidence." Amina reached into the torn pocket of her dress and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. "I drew this, sir. It's a map to the plantation. I followed the delivery truck one day because I was curious. I saw the conditions there. I saw children younger than me working in the fields. I saw the guards beating workers who tried to rest." Chief Nwosu took the paper, studying the crude but detailed map. His hands trembled slightly. "Yes, there's a woman there," Amina continued. "Her name is Mama Ngozi. She's been working that plantation for 12 years. If you go there and ask her what it's like, she'll tell you the truth. She has nothing left to lose." 3 days later, Chief Nwosu did something he hadn't done in over a decade. He left his comfortable office and drove to a plantation himself. He had told Amina to wait at the hotel, arranging a room for her and new clothes. He had fed her, watched in quiet horror as she devoured 3 meals in one sitting, her body desperate for nutrition it had been denied for years. He had given her money for the antibiotics she needed, observing as the hotel doctor examined her and diagnosed malnutrition, anemia, and the early stages of tuberculosis. All of this had shaken him. But it was the drive to the plantation that truly broke him. The map Amina had drawn led him 3 hours outside Enugu, down roads that deteriorated from paved to dirt. The plantation itself was hidden behind a facade of legitimacy. There was an official entrance with a guard, proper signage, even a small office. But Chief Nwosu didn't go to the main entrance. Following Amina's instructions, he parked his car a mile away and walked through the bush to the back of the property, where the workers' quarters were located. What he saw made him physically ill. Children, some no older than 7 or 8, were hauling heavy baskets of palm fruit in the afternoon sun. Adults worked with the kind of defeated posture that comes from years of exploitation. The quarters were shacks that barely qualified as shelter, and a single water pump served hundreds of workers. The smell of unwashed bodies and open sewage hung heavy in the air. Chief Nwosu found Mama Ngozi harvesting palm fruit. She was in her 40s but looked 20 years older, her hands gnarled and scarred from years of labor. When he approached her and asked about working conditions, she laughed bitterly. "You from the government? We've had inspections before, money changes hands, everyone looks the other way. Nothing changes." "I'm not from the government," Chief Nwosu said quietly. "I'm from the Golden Meridian Hotel. Your palm oil ends up in my kitchen. I didn't know about this." Mama Ngozi's expression hardened. "You didn't want to know? There's a difference." She told him everything, the 12-hour workdays, the wages so low they barely covered food, the children who worked because their parents couldn't survive without their help, the injuries that went untreated, the workers who simply disappeared when they complained too loudly. "We make your hotel rich," Mama Ngozi said, her voice filled with quiet rage. "We break our backs so you can serve premium palm oil to people who will never know our names. And you didn't know?" "No, sir, you just didn't care." Chief Nwosu had no response. She was right. That night, back in his hotel office, Chief Nwosu sat with his head in his hands. Amina sat across from him, waiting quietly. "You were right," he said finally, "about all of it. It's worse than you described." "I know, sir. I've built my fortune on the backs of people like Mama Ngozi, like you. I told myself I was a self-made man, that I earned everything through hard work. But the truth is, I just climbed higher on the pyramid by standing on others." Amina didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. The truth was laid bare between them. "I have a choice to make," Chief Nwosu continued. "I can pretend this conversation never happened. Fire those suppliers, find new ones who hide their exploitation better, keep my profit margins and my reputation intact. Or," Amina asked quietly, "or I can burn it all down, restructure everything. Pay fair wages, use ethical suppliers, accept lower profits. Transform this hotel from an empire built on exploitation into a model for how business should be done. That would cost you millions, sir. It would cost me more than that. My competitors will think I'm insane, my investors will rebel. Some of my business relationships will end. I'll be attacked in the media and investigated by people who profit from the current system. It could destroy everything I've built." "But it would be right," Amina said softly. Chief Nwosu looked at her, this girl who had nothing but somehow had more moral clarity than most wealthy people he knew. "Why did you tell me?" he asked. "You could have sold this information to journalists, to my competitors, to anyone who wanted to damage me. You could have used it for blackmail. Why give me the chance to fix it?" "Because I heard your story, sir. I know you came from nothing, like me. I know you remember what poverty feels like, and when you watched me sing, I saw something in your eyes, recognition. You saw yourself in me, the you that existed before money changed you." She paused, then continued, "I told you because I believe people can change. I have to believe that. Because if rich people can't change, if the system is unfixable, then there's no hope for any of us." Chief Nwosu felt something break inside him. Not a breaking that destroys, but one that liberates. The walls he had built around his conscience, the rationalizations he had used to justify his success, the comfortable lies he had told himself about meritocracy and hard work, all of it crumbled. "What's your real dream, Amina?" he asked. "Not just food for today. What do you really want?" Amina looked surprised by the question. No one had ever asked her that before. "I want to sing, sir. For people who choose to listen, not because they pity me. I want to help other street children find their voices too. I want to prove that talent and worth aren't determined by bank accounts." Chief Nwosu nodded slowly. "Then let's make a deal. I'm going to restructure my business. It's going to be expensive, difficult, and might fail. But I'm going to try. And you're going to help me. You're going to be my conscience, my reminder of why this matters. And in return, I'm going to invest in your dream." "Sir, I don't need—" "This isn't charity," Chief Nwosu interrupted firmly. "This is a partnership. You showed me the truth. Now we're going to change things together. Deal." Amina, for the first time in 11 years, felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Real, genuine hope that tomorrow could be different than today. "Deal," she whispered. But Amina didn't know yet that the deeper she dug into the hotel's business practices, the more she would discover. And some people would do anything to keep those secrets buried, even if it meant silencing a homeless girl who had become inconveniently visible. The price of truth might cost her life. But for the first time since becoming an orphan, Amina had something worth dying for, a purpose. The next 4 weeks transformed both their lives in ways neither could have predicted. Chief Nwosu started the process of restructuring his supply chain. He terminated contracts with the exploitative plantation and 6 other suppliers whose practices couldn't withstand ethical scrutiny. His legal team worked overtime drafting new supplier agreements with built-in protections for workers. Fair wages, reasonable hours, prohibition of child labor, regular independent inspections. The financial impact was immediate and brutal, and his profit margins dropped by 40%. 2 of his investors pulled out, calling his new direction economic suicide. Competitors began poaching his high-end clients, whispering that the Golden Meridian was losing its edge, that Chief Nwosu had gone soft. But something else happened too. Stories began appearing in local media about the hotel's transformation. Workers from the exploitative suppliers started speaking out, praising Chief Nwosu for being the first major client to take a stand. Young people, the demographic that actually cared about ethical business practices, started choosing the Golden Meridian specifically because of its new direction. And Amina became the face of this transformation. Chief Nwosu had hired a music teacher for her, a retired opera singer who saw Amina's raw talent and began the painstaking process of training it. He set up a small studio in the hotel where Amina could practice and record. He arranged for her to perform every Friday evening in the hotel's lounge, not as a charity case, but as a featured artist. The performances were revolutionary. Amina sang songs about poverty, about injustice, about the invisible people who made luxury possible. She sang the stories of Mama Ngozi and hundreds of others like her. Her music became a bridge between worlds that usually never touched. But not everyone was happy about this bridge. It started with anonymous emails, then threatening phone calls. Someone spray-painted "traitor" on the hotel's wall. Chief Nwosu's car was vandalized. And Amina started noticing men watching her, men who didn't belong to the usual hotel crowd, who disappeared when she looked directly at them. One night after her Friday performance, Chief Nwosu called her into his office. His face was grave. "We need to talk about your safety," he said without preamble. "The men watching me," Amina said. "I noticed them too." "It's worse than that." Chief Nwosu showed her his phone. "I've been getting messages, threats, not just against me, against you specifically. Someone wants you to stop singing, stop talking about the supply chain issues." "Who?" "I have my suspicions. The former suppliers I dropped have connections to some very dangerous people. They've lost millions because of our new policies. Other hotels are watching what happens here. If I succeed in running an ethical, profitable business, it sets a precedent they can't afford." Amina felt cold fear settling in her stomach. What do they want? They want you to disappear. They want me to go back to the old ways. They want this whole experiment to fail publicly and dramatically. Chief Nwosu's jaw tightened. I've hired security for you. You'll have a bodyguard whenever you leave the hotel. Sir, I can't live like that. I've spent my whole life on the streets. I can't be locked in a cage now, even a golden one. Amina, these people are serious. They've sent me photos. His voice cracked. Photos of you walking to your music lessons. Photos of you in the market. They're showing me they can get to you whenever they want. But there was something Chief Nwosu wasn't telling Amina. It's something he had discovered in his investigation that went far deeper than exploitative labor practices. One of his former suppliers, the palm oil plantation owner, was a man named Eze Okonkwo. Eze was connected to a network of businessmen and politicians who had built their fortunes on a complex web of exploitation, corruption, and violence. The plantation was just one piece of a much larger machine. And Chief Nwosu had inadvertently kicked a hornet's nest. 2 nights after his conversation with Amina, Chief Nwosu received a visit from Eze himself. The man showed up at the hotel unannounced, walking past security as if he owned the place. In many ways, he had. Until Chief Nwosu cut ties with him. Obiora, Eze said, using Chief Nwosu's first name with the familiarity of old associates. We need to talk about your recent moral awakening. They met in Chief Nwosu's office. Eze was a large man, expensive agbada barely containing his bulk, gold chains around his neck, the smell of expensive cologne failing to mask something more sinister. I made you a rich man, Eze said, his voice friendly but with an edge of steel. My cheap supplies let you undercut competitors. My connections got you permits when others were denied. And this is how you repay me? By publicly shaming my business practices? I didn't publicly shame anyone. I simply chose new suppliers. Don't play games with me. Eze's smile disappeared. You know what you've done. That street rat you've made your pet project. She's been singing songs about exploitation, about workers being abused. Journalists are asking questions. Our government inspectors who used to look the other way are suddenly interested. You've cost me millions. Good, Chief Nwosu said quietly. You've stolen millions from workers who had no choice but to accept your exploitation. Eze stood up, his massive frame towering over the desk. I'm going to give you one chance to fix this. Send the girl away. Issue a statement saying you made a mistake, that my business practices are sound. Return to our old arrangement. Do this, and we can all move forward. And if I refuse, then I'll destroy you. Your hotel, your reputation, your life, all of it. And the girl? Eze's smile returned, cold and cruel. Street children disappear every day in Enugu. Nobody looks for them. Nobody cares. After Eze left, Chief Nwosu sat in his office for hours, staring at the city lights outside. And he had a choice to make, protect himself and Amina by backing down or stand his ground and risk everything. While Chief Nwosu was wrestling with his decision, Amina was making a discovery of her own. She had been living in the hotel for weeks now, and the staff had grown accustomed to her presence. They talked around her, sometimes forgetting she was there. Old street survival skills made her good at being invisible when she wanted to be. That evening, she overheard 2 of the hotel's assistant managers talking in the service corridor. The chief is finished, one was saying. Eze Okonkwo doesn't make threats lightly. I'm updating my resume tonight. What about the girl? Think she knows what she's gotten herself into? That orphan. She's just a pawn. When this blows up, she'll be the first casualty. Eze's people don't leave loose ends. Amina's blood ran cold. She slipped away before they noticed her, her mind racing. She had brought this danger to Chief Nwosu's door. Her desire to expose the truth, to make her voice heard, had put a good man in danger. That night she made a decision. She would leave the hotel, disappear back into the streets where she came from. Without her, maybe Eze would leave Chief Nwosu alone. Maybe things could go back to normal. She packed her few belongings. The new clothes Chief Nwosu had bought her, the antibiotics that were finally clearing her tuberculosis, the guitar that had been properly repaired. She left a note on the hotel stationery, her handwriting careful and deliberate. Dear Chief Nwosu, thank you for everything. You gave me hope when I had none. You proved that good people still exist in this world. But I can't let you destroy yourself trying to protect me. I'm going back to the streets where I belong. Maybe without me here, singing songs that anger powerful people, you can rebuild your business and stay safe. Don't look for me. I'm good at being invisible. Thank you for teaching me that my voice matters. Amina. She slipped out of the hotel at 3 a.m. when even the night security was drowsy. She walked through the familiar streets of Enugu, heading toward the bridge that had been her home for so many years. But she didn't know that Chief Nwosu had installed a tracking device in her guitar, not to control her, but to protect her. And she didn't know that her leaving would force him to make the most important decision of his life. And Chief Nwosu discovered Amina was gone at 6 a.m. when he went to check on her before his morning meeting. He found the note and his heart sank. He immediately checked the tracker. Amina was at the bridge, back where he had first heard her sing. He could let her go. It would solve his problem. Ezi would leave him alone. He could quietly rebuild his business, maybe implement some ethical practices without making such a public spectacle. He could return to his comfortable life. But as he held Amina's note, reading her words about believing good people still existed, he realized something profound. Amina hadn't just exposed the exploitation in his supply chain. She had exposed the lie he'd been living, that success and morality were separate things, or that you could compartmentalize your life into business and personal values. She had shown him that every choice mattered, that there was no such thing as neutral. Either you stood for something, or you stood for nothing. His wife's voice echoed in his memory, something she'd said before the cancer took her. Obiora, when you die, nobody will remember how much money you made. They'll remember what you stood for. He had stood for nothing but profit for too long. Amina, a homeless orphan with a broken guitar, had stood for truth and dignity even when it cost her everything. He made his decision. He called an emergency press conference for that afternoon. He contacted every journalist, blogger and media outlet in Enugu. He prepared a statement that would either make him a hero or destroy him completely. And then he drove to the bridge to bring Amina home. Chief Nwosu found Amina sitting under the bridge, her guitar in her lap, staring at the water flowing beneath. She didn't look surprised to see him. "The tracker in the guitar," she said quietly. "I should have known. I wasn't trying to control you. I was trying to keep you safe. You can't keep me safe, sir, not from people like Okonkwo. Men like that, they always win. They're too powerful, too connected. I was foolish to think one song, one voice could change anything." Chief Nwosu sat down beside her on the dirty concrete, his expensive suit getting ruined. He didn't care. "You changed me," he said simply. "That's not nothing. It's not enough. You're going to lose everything because of me." "No, Amina. I was going to lose everything anyway. I was losing my soul. Piece by piece, deal by deal. You gave me a chance to save it." He took a deep breath. "I'm holding a press conference this afternoon. I'm going to tell the truth about everything, the exploitation, the corruption, Easy's threats, all of it. I'm going to expose the entire system." Amina's eyes widened in fear. "They'll kill you. They'll kill both of us. Maybe. Or maybe when the truth is public, they can't silence us without making themselves obvious. Maybe other people who've been afraid to speak up will find their courage. Maybe we'll start something bigger than either of us." "That's a lot of maybes, sir. I know, but I'd rather die standing for something than live comfortably standing for nothing." He looked at her seriously. "I need you there, at the press conference. I need people to see you, hear your story, and understand what's at stake. Will you do it?" Amina looked at her guitar, at the bridge that had been her home, at the life she'd been ready to return to. Then she looked at Chief Nwosu, this man who had somehow become family, who believed in her enough to risk everything. "Okay," she said, "let's tell the truth." The Golden Meridian Hotel's main ballroom was packed. Journalists filled every seat, cameras lined the back wall, and the energy in the room was electric. Word had spread that Chief Nwosu had called an emergency press conference about serious allegations, and everyone wanted to know what was happening. Ezi Okonkwo sat in the back, his face impassive but his eyes cold and threatening. Chief Nwosu saw him and didn't look away. When Chief Nwosu took the podium with Amina standing nervously beside him, the room fell silent. 4 weeks ago, he began, a homeless orphan girl stood outside this hotel and asked if she could sing for food. Most people laughed at her. I almost didn't stop to listen, but I did, and that decision changed my life. He proceeded to tell the entire story. Amina's performance, the investigation into his suppliers, the discovery of widespread exploitation, his decision to restructure his business, and finally, Ez's threats. "I have documentation of everything," Chief Nwosu said, holding up a thick folder. Wage records showing payments below minimum wage, photos of children working in dangerous conditions, recordings of conversations between suppliers about how to avoid inspections. And I'm releasing all of it to the public today. The room erupted in chaos, journalists shouted questions, cameras flashed, and in the back, Eze Okonkwo stood up and walked out, his face dark with rage. Chief Nwosu raised his hand for silence. But this isn't just about exposing corruption. It's about proving that business can be done ethically. Over the past month, this hotel has operated with fair trade suppliers, paying above-market rates to ensure workers are treated with dignity. Yes, our profit margins have decreased, but our bookings have increased. Customers, especially young people, want to support businesses that align with their values. He gestured to Amina. This young woman taught me something crucial. That success built on others' suffering isn't success at all. It's just exploitation with a better marketing budget. Real success is creating value without destroying lives in the process. Amina stepped forward, her voice shaking but clear. "I'm nobody special. I'm just a girl who was invisible for too long. But Chief Nwosu listened to me when powerful people wouldn't. He risked everything to do the right thing. And if he can change, if a billionaire can choose ethics over profit, then maybe the whole system can change too." She began to sing, not the song from that first night, but a new one she'd written about hope, about change, about refusing to accept that cruelty and exploitation were just how things are. By the time she finished, there were tears on hardened journalists' faces. The footage would go viral within hours, spreading across Nigeria and beyond. The following weeks were chaos. Eze Okonkwo was arrested after law enforcement, pressured by public outcry following the press conference, finally investigated his operations. And the evidence Chief Nwosu provided led to raids on 6 different facilities. Hundreds of workers, including dozens of children, were freed from exploitative conditions. But Eze wasn't alone. The investigation uncovered a network of corruption involving government officials, police officers, and other businessmen. Several prominent figures were implicated. Some fled the country. Others fought back with lawsuits and political pressure. Chief Nwosu faced attacks from every direction. Competitors tried to poach his staff. Former allies turned on him. His remaining investors threatened to sue. His hotel bookings initially plummeted as the controversy swirled. But something remarkable happened. Workers from the exploitative suppliers began organizing, using Amina's story as inspiration. A labor rights movement began forming in Enugu, then spreading to other states. Students protested outside businesses known for exploitation. Consumer boycotts forced companies to reconsider their practices. And the Golden Meridian Hotel became a symbol of possibility, proof that ethical business could survive. Slowly, bookings began returning, then increasing. Young entrepreneurs wanted to meet with Chief Nwosu, learn from his model. International media picked up the story. Ethical investment funds approached him with capital. Amina's music career took off in ways she never imagined. Her recordings went viral. A major record label approached her, but Chief Nwosu helped her negotiate a deal that gave her creative control and let her use her platform for advocacy. She started a foundation, Voices from the Streets, that provided music education to homeless children across Nigeria. She performed at sold-out concerts, but also at orphanages and under bridges, never forgetting where she came from. Mama Ngozi, the plantation worker who had first told Chief Nwosu the truth about conditions, became the foundation's first employee. She helped identify children who needed help, using her knowledge of the streets to reach those most invisible. 1 year after that first performance outside the Golden Meridian Hotel, Chief Nwosu and Amina sat on the rooftop of the hotel, watching the sunset over Enugu. "Do you ever regret it?" Amina asked. "Everything you lost?" Chief Nwosu considered the question. He had lost a fortune in profit margins. He had lost business relationships built over decades. He had lost the easy comfort of not thinking too hard about where his wealth came from. But he had gained something more valuable. "I sleep now," he said simply. "For the first time in years, I sleep through the night without anxiety medicine. I wake up excited about work instead of dreading it. I look at myself in the mirror and like who I see." He looked at Amina, no longer a homeless orphan, but a confident young woman who had found her voice in more ways than one. "You saved my life that night," he said. "I was dying slowly, drowning in success that meant nothing. You threw me a lifeline disguised as a song." "We saved each other," Amina corrected. "I gave you a purpose. You gave me a platform. Together we proved that change is possible." Below them, the hotel bustled with activity. In the kitchen, fairly paid workers prepared meals using ethically sourced ingredients. In the conference room, a meeting was underway about expanding the ethical supplier network to other hotels. In the lounge, a young homeless boy Chief Nwosu had recently hired was setting up for the evening's performance. The system hadn't changed overnight. Exploitation still existed, poverty still trapped millions. But cracks had appeared in the walls that separated the haves from the have-nots. And through those cracks, light was beginning to shine. "What's next for you?" Chief Nwosu asked. Amina smiled. "I'm performing at the National Theatre next month. Can you believe it? Me, on that stage. But I'm also starting music schools in 3 slums across Enugu. And I'm working with legislators on labor protection laws. And I'm recording an album that tells stories of workers and street children and everyone the system forgets." Busy schedule for someone who just wanted to sing for food. "Well, I learned from the best that once you start changing things, you can't stop halfway." She looked at him seriously. "Thank you, Chief, for listening, for believing, for being brave enough to change." Chief Nwosu felt tears in his eyes. "Thank you for teaching me that the most powerful force in the world isn't money or connections or political influence. It's a voice that refuses to be silent." They sat in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, casting light on a city that was slowly, painfully, beautifully learning to value people over profit. Amina didn't know then that her foundation would eventually help thousands of children find their voices. She didn't know that 5 years later, Nigeria would pass landmark labor protection laws, partly because of the movement she'd helped start. She didn't know that Chief Nwosu's model of ethical business would inspire hundreds of other companies to reconsider their practices. All she knew was that she had sung for food and found something more valuable. She had found her power. And she was never going to be silent again. Today, if you visit Enugu, you'll see the impact of one homeless girl's courage and one billionaire's choice to change. The Golden Meridian Hotel is still standing, not the most profitable hotel in the city, but one of the most respected. It employs workers from disadvantaged backgrounds, pays living wages, and uses its platform to advocate for ethical business practices across Nigeria. Amina Okafor is now a household name in Nigeria and beyond. Her music has won international awards. But more importantly, her foundation has provided music education and job training to over 10,000 street children. Many of them have gone on to successful careers, not just in music, but in business, education, and activism. Mama Ngozi, the plantation worker whose testimony helped expose the exploitation, now runs a workers' cooperative that supplies ethical products to businesses across West Africa. The workers own shares in the cooperative, ensuring they benefit directly from their labor. And the movement they started, the labor rights protests, the consumer boycotts, the demand for ethical business practices, continues to grow. It hasn't solved all of Nigeria's problems. Poverty still exists, corruption still exists, exploitation still exists. But now there are voices speaking against it, voices that refuse to accept that this is just how things are. So now we ask you, what would you have done if you were in Amina's shoes? Would you have risked humiliation to sing for strangers? Would you have spoken truth to power, knowing it might cost you everything? And what about Chief Nwosu? If you discovered your success was built on others' suffering, would you have the courage to change? Would you risk your wealth, your reputation, your safety to do what's right? Drop a comment below and let us know. We're reading every single one, because here's the deeper truth this story reveals. We all have more power than we think. Amina was homeless, uneducated, marginalized in every possible way. Yet her voice changed an industry, inspired a movement, transformed lives. You might not be a billionaire like Chief Nwosu, but you make choices every day about where you spend your money, what businesses you support, which voices you amplify, what injustices you're willing to ignore for your own comfort. Every purchase is a vote for the kind of world you want to live in. Every time you speak up against injustice, you create space for others to do the same. Every act of courage, no matter how small, contributes to change. We challenge you to find your voice this week. And maybe it's supporting a business that pays fair wages instead of the cheapest option. Speaking up when you see someone being treated unfairly. Donating to organizations that help marginalized communities. Simply listening, really listening, to someone whose story is different from yours. Amina's song changed a billionaire's heart. Your voice could change someone's life too. If this story moved you, we have another one coming next week that will blow your mind. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you're notified the moment it drops. And if you believe, like we do, that anyone can change the world, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their voice matters, that they have power, that change is possible. The world wants you to believe that you're powerless, that the system is too big, too entrenched, too powerful to change. That voices like Amina's, poor, marginalized, invisible, don't matter. But they laughed when a fat, homeless orphan girl begged to sing in exchange for food. They thought she was a joke. And then she opened her mouth, and everything changed. Your voice matters too. The question is, will you use it? This story, while fictional, is inspired by the countless real voices of courage speaking truth to power across Africa and around the world. To everyone who refuses to be silent in the face of injustice, this story is for you. Thank you for watching. See you in the next story.